morning. Thank you for joining us this week. We have a panel of brokers today. So we have John, Noel, myself, Jennefer, Transworld, West Central Ohio, Jordan, and Vince came all the way down from Cleveland Metro.
That's right.
And so
happy to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, everyone. So today we're just going to get a bunch of questions and we're going to try and answer them the best we can, give you insights on anything we have, being a broker in today's market. So let's get started.
There's a lot of activity right now. It seems like, towards the end of the year last year, people were waiting on the election results and kind of the government changes. And then, we got deals back on track towards the beginning of the first half of this year. But boy, from summer on, it's just been incredibly busy. A lot of sellers, people that were waiting on the sidelines, really trying to decide if and when is the right time to sell.
Yep.
But boy, we're seeing a heck of a lot of activity right now, all the way through till the very end of this year. I see it. Agreed.
Do you find that the buyers are more savvy with what they're coming in with?
You bet. I think, a lot of buyers look at multiple different listings. So they might have gone and looked at a couple of different businesses before. They've learned a lot in what they look at, and they refine a lot of what they're looking for when they come to us. But buyers are very educated at this point. They're focused on capital markets, lending markets. They're focused on how the economy is affecting their business, potential from a growth standpoint. But they're coming to the table quite prepared.
I found a lot of buyers are coming in saying they missed out on one or two other opportunities. They learned something from that. And now they're coming in very strategically minded to get the deal done.
It's a good point. It creates a little bit of urgency with the buyer. They get their paperwork turned in. If it's a lending situation, they get through negotiations quickly. But that's a very good point. I experienced the same thing.
I actually appreciate it.
So do I. And I like the high impact questions. I like the critical questions about the opportunities. It helps make for a very good and robust deal.
Yeah, sometimes they have to experience going through a couple times because you don't know what you need to do until you do it, right?
Exactly.
All your financial documents and everything else that you need to close on a deal.
You bet.
It's interesting because a lot of the questions that they've been asking has actually helped me create a better sim, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I need to come at them with more information.
It's interesting. I was recently on an entrepreneurship through acquisition panel, and we were talking about buyers in today's climate and environment. And the coaching and feedback was for buyers to be ready, prepared, and equipped to bid on some of these opportunities. So I'm starting to see buyers show up with a pre-approval for a bank situation, nice profile with a little bit of their background so that we could appropriately introduce the buyer to the sellers, but they're definitely coming to the table a lot more prepared and qualified, particularly in the latter half of this year than I've seen in the first 6 months of the year.
Yeah, as a buyer.
But if they've missed out, if they've seen like what happened in 2024 where people started to sit on the sidelines longer and then they decide they're ready and the ideal business already sold or transitioned, they're doing everything they can to actually show up prepared and qualified.
I find that we need to be prepared for as well because they're coming in asking specific questions about the business and things like that we need to make sure we know those answers with the sellers.
Exactly. I have a listing. It's a $4 million listing of a more mom and pop, owner operated type of business, like 4 employees in it. So it's big enough to attract capital investors, but they want, to hire someone and bring them in, and that's just not the model. But for an owner operator, it's a difficult one because
the sale price is so large then that owner operator probably doesn't have the financial chops. They haven't gone through what Vince was saying, like coming to the table pre-qualified. And that, it kind of puts you in a rock and a hard place.
So we've had to have that tough conversation with the seller on, you want to sell this for $4 million. How creative are you going to be with that financing? So they've said they'll do 20% seller financing. They'll do a holdback, time related, not
productivity related,
right?
Not
sales
qualified or sales.
Yep. So it's giving that buyer an opportunity to come in at a lower
front end investment to actually get their foot in the door and get going.
It's an important point. As brokers, it's our job to help our sellers understand what are their options. And I think that we, when we onboard a new seller client and get their business pre-qualified for an SBA acquisition loan or talk about opportunities from earn-out scenario or seller financing scenarios upfront with the seller, it makes for a far more robust conversation with the buyer when it comes time to talk about offers. And so you can get a little bit more creative and flexible looking at multiple capital stacks, multiple different ways of looking at a transaction to get it over the finish line. And certainly in today's market with this government shutdown and the SBA impact because of that, people are getting even more creative.
Yeah.
Yep.
Having to be.
Right. Seeing more cash deals.
Are you finding more sellers open to the seller financing and holdbacks and things like that?
Absolutely. And it's been my experience that sellers are very willing to do a seller finance opportunity if it helps get an SBA deal over the finish line. There are some that will do a full seller note, but I think that sellers are more attuned to what it takes to get a transaction over the finish line in this economic environment.
Are you seeing any situations right now because of the government shutdown and what that's doing to traditional funding where sellers are almost like they're getting antsy because it's putting that pressure on them still having to run their business? If they don't continue with profitability, that then forces a softer valuation come time that, you know, SBA funding opens back up.
You know, it's interesting, Jordan, it goes back to urgency. It creates more urgency to get deals done, get them over the finish line before the end of the year. And so, you know, what we're seeing is, you know, when people are coming to the table wanting to deliver a product to get a deal financed, people are very open to doing what they need to do to get the documentation required, look at different structures, look at different ways of getting these deals financed.
There's a waiting list for all the, you know, for everyone who wants a loan right now. So it's going to take time to go through that.
That's really an important point, and that's probably the biggest impact, John, that you're bringing up is what's going to happen when it does reopen. I was speaking with an SBA banker at a conference recently, and we were talking about, you know, when the SBA does reopen, kind of what's the backlog going to look like. And it's important that clients and brokers recognize the distinction between a preferred SBA lender and a non-preferred SBA lender. And I think that when the government reopens and they are reopening the SBA, they'll be able to access the system to get those E-Tran numbers, get that SBA number, and they'll just go through the preferred lending institutions first because they're already underwritten. And then all they really need to do is get the documentation of the SBA and get the E-Tran number. If it's a non-preferred lender, they're going to have to go to the back of the line and have the whole deal re-underwritten by a member of the SBA underwriting department.
And that line is growing
certainly
every
is.
single day.
It is.
Yeah. Do you believe we should be having conversations with our sellers and buyers about switching to a preferred bank?
In my experience, it's vital to work with a preferred lender. I think that, you know, when you're working with a non-preferred lender, the deal's really getting underwritten twice. Once by the bank and then once again by the SBA. And so using a preferred lender, you go through that underwriting process once, you get the critical questions when you go through a deal presentation to the credit committee once, and then they are able to get the SBA number because they're a preferred lender. And so I think it just speeds up the process pretty significantly.
Do you think you'll have any pushback from buyers on that have their own lender that they want to use versus a preferred SBA lender?
I wouldn't say pushback, but I think it's an important part of our role to explain the differences.
So an education piece.
It really, truly
just helping
is.
them understand that again, it's very simple. You go through it twice or you go through it once, and you go through it once, it's more thorough, more accurate. It speeds up that process, and I think making sure that our buyers understand the ramifications of sticking with a non-preferred SBA lender because of the delays that the government shutdown is inevitably creating.
It's a perfect environment right now to amplify
and make that transition.
And you know, John, it's a really good point because everybody's got their local favorite banker. This guy's been banking my family for 35 years. I want to go to him. And you don't want to take business away from another bank. It's really just about providing options to the client. And the clients deserve to have multiple options, not just one. In most cases, we get at least 2, depending upon the volume of the SBA lender, it might be
Yeah.
3. But we really look for SBA preferred lenders that have high commitments to service, ones that we've experienced a smooth closing process for,
Yeah.
because somebody could promise the moon, but when you get to
Right.
closing, it's a little bit more difficult. Getting all of the documentation early and upfront, and also recognizing that that's not all that the bank's going to ask for.
Right.
They're going to be asking for a lot more information once it gets into full underwriting, and then you'll have another set of information that's required once it gets into closing. So I think to speed up the process, once it opens, make sure that the package is tight, that you've got great documentation on the normalizations that you use, that you're really looking out for exorbitant add-backs that would make
Slow
it
things down.
slow things
Yeah.
down, make it more difficult for a credit person to make a decision.
Also ask for if they're going on vacation. Learn this the hard way.
Right.
Know their vacation schedules, all the players, the attorneys, the accountants, everybody you need to get that final information to get it across the board.
I think one of the most important things a broker to do is stay connected to the banker and the buyer and the seller. Don't think just because you have a bank deal that it's on autopilot and it's just going to sail through.
No.
There's always something that's needed from the seller or the buyer. And when we act as an intermediary between the seller and the buyer, we have a lot of access to information that will help get deals done.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I really coach my brokers to do is to make sure that you stay in constant, regular contact with the banker. What else do you need? What can I help you with? And
Instead of
Especially-
waiting for them to ask for things, be proactive in making sure that you're on the same page with what they need and what they don't have yet.
you're
Especially
absolutely
the longer it takes to do the deal, you're going to need more financials. Every time you go
Every
past a
time.
certain deadline, you're going to need an update. So it's
And I
getting
think
those things done in a timely manner.
Exactly. And I'm in sellers. As a very new broker myself, I'm experiencing that same process, even just on asking them what we need to create a BOV or a SIM. And I'm like, yes, I get that you did the checklist, but that doesn't mean that that's it.
It's so important. Setting the table properly is probably one of the most important things you could do in that situation. And letting people know, I'm asking you for this information now. There will be more that will be needed
Right,
to
right.
make sure that they're aware. People don't like to be caught off guard.
Oh, absolutely.
If I look at a month's period of time, I mean, we're constantly on listing appointments and helping people understand what their options are.
Yeah.
Some people, when you sit down and explain their options, and what maybe the most probable selling price might be, they might decide to wait and
Yeah.
create an exit plan and sell when they're more equipped and ready, which is a good thing to do. People need to sell when they're ready. But I think that sellers are anxious. There's a lot of activity in the market. There are few people that do what we do in the business brokerage space, and people need consultation, advice, and coaching.
To your point about being ready, it's just like the deal we were talking about earlier, Jordan. The individual, it's like they've only been in business for a year and a couple months. And it's like, are they ready to sell? They haven't really grown the business, but they want to get out of the business. So it's a tough place to be.
It's
right?
hard when, obviously we have the government shutdown to point to, or tariffs, or fill in the blank. There's always going to be
Election year.
election year. There's always going to be external factors that are out of buyers and sellers' control, and emotional stuff to factor in. So this specific seller situation, while it is a very logic-based spot that they're in, it's they're unfortunately in a place where it's sell or close, and nobody wants to realize that they put all of their life's work and hard-earned money into a business that they believed in, and then something completely out of their control. In this case, it was I call it like the ripple effect or hangover of COVID, where it was just simply not getting permits. Their landlord couldn't get permits to install 2 bathrooms. That was it. And what that delayed them starting their business for 3 years.
Wow.
After they had already done an SBA loan to
They have to pay back.
get funding for fixtures and equipment to launch. And so all of those 3 years, they're paying on a loan with no revenue. And now that they have finally launched, what they experienced is that excitement, that buzz around starting a new venture was gone, because it was, okay, we're launching now, and then 6 months delay, and then a year delay.
that's-
And again, being very new in the brokerage space, I feel like I'm sort of already a magnet for those types of situations. Like, 50% of the sellers that I've started to work with have been in that rock and a hard
Well,
place.
I think every seller has something, right? And
Right.
there's no perfect seller, or at least I haven't found one yet.
Well, no
The
perfect.
quilt shop, that was amazing.
Well, you had
Not
one.
to put too fine of a point to it, right?
Jordan, I'm glad you're bringing up that kind of emotional impact because this is a highly emotional transaction.
Yeah.
It
The
is.
seller has the 100% of their esteem tied up into the performance of their business.
are.
It's fed their family for years. It's created incredible opportunity for them, and now they're giving up something to somebody else that they're no longer going to be, leading anymore. And so it does take an emotional toll on them. On the buy side, it's emotional for a buyer to, sign up for a $1 or $2 million SBA loan or have to give a lot of personal financial information to get an SBA loan and get extra insurance policies and go through that whole process. So the buyer is seeing their liquid cash go into a business, it goes away.
Yeah.
The seller is seeing their business go away. And so I'm glad you honed in on that. You got to pay attention to the emotional impact that a transaction has on the seller and the buyer.
100%.
I was just seeing one of the shops that I sold this last time. The seller was only able to get 2.5, multiple.
Only.
Well, right? They had it for over 60 years. And they're walking away, and the seller's dad is in his 90s. And he's like, "You're only getting that much money. Don't sell." Putting pressure on his son. And so then his son's feeling like, I need to get more. Let's raise it. No.
But to that point, what's the cost? This is where logic and emotion just sort of hit head on. And what's the cost of waiting? What's the cost of pushing back to get a higher multiple when we're dealing with tangible variables that we can point to and measure, and then blending them in with emotions? Like, yeah, sure, we could push and try to get a 3 times multiple. And in that time that the seller takes their eye off of running a profitable, stable business to go after, a simple SBA funded deal or a 3 times or 4 times multiple, their profits go down. And can they
don't
then
sustain.
it's sort of like you bit your nose off to spite your face because you get that 3 times multiple, but now 6 months or a year have gone by while you're chasing that, and your profitability's gone down, which has impacted the overall sale price.
It's managing the seller's expectations as well. I mean, some of these guys or like women, they want more than it's realistically worth.
Yeah.
And
Almost everyone.
Always,
you have to manage that down to what's reasonable. And it's like,
Not trying to beat you down.
Right.
no,
just
but it's doing the
realistic.
pencil test really with the financials, right? If you're doing a loan, the bank's only going to lend you so much based on the value of that or the cash flow
And the
of that
buyer
business.
still needs to eat and put a roof over their head.
Yep.
And exuberant expectations from the seller are hard to overcome sometimes.
Yeah.
But I'm glad Jordan, you talked about that opportunity cost, because what is the opportunity cost for them to wait for that perfect deal, wait for that perfect amount, wait for that perfect buyer? And on the buy side, people that put in kind of lowball offers, you're going to keep, chipping
Spinning
away.
your wheels.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What's the opportunity cost? And people have a hard time figuring that out.
And that's, I feel like, where we come in and manage the things that we can calculate, manage the things that we can research and bring to the table for them, and navigate, because you can't really, manage or research emotions,
Exactly.
but navigating the emotions
Yep.
with the things that are, quantifiable.
Right before we got into being a broker, the multiples were much higher.
Right.
Things were flying off the shelf at crazy rates. Yeah, there was new industries. There was new
Supply and demand.
Yeah.
The supply wasn't as strong. The demand was there, which drives those multiples up.
That too is
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
The cost of money.
as
Yeah.
the Fed funds rate drops, it's going to lower the
It was a good time
borrowing
to be
cost for a lender. What's that?
It was a good time to be a broker back then.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're borrowing and doing an SBA loan at 6% versus we were at 11%
Yeah.
last year, it's a big difference on what you're paying each month.
It's true. And I think, people need to keep in mind that the multiple means you're paying a premium on those earnings. And so what is it about that business that would command that type of premium on the earnings? And there may be something in there, contracts in place, great financials. A lot of this comes out in a QOE when you're in the middle of a deal. But when you're looking at pricing a deal and looking at multiples, we're going to give our clients a range of what the most probable selling price is. At the end of the day, the business is going to sell what a buyer's willing to pay for it.
Right.
And those multiples, when you back into them, they're constantly changing.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's setting the expectation with the seller that this is our best guess of the sellable price, not actually what the market may purchase. The market will say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Again, back to expectation setting is just making sure that they understand, and that's where I'm at in my journey as a broker, is helping the sellers that I'm working with understand that like that big scary document called our marketing agreement is, while it's important that we get it as accurate as possible on the front end, and we're reaching for the goals that they have with the sale, that it's not set in stone. Just because we're agreeing and signing to market your business at X amount of dollars, which is a multiple of whatever, that doesn't mean that that's the end all be all. This is what we're going to put our foot forward with, and this is our best foot forward, and then managing those expectations through the process of we're going to, do everything we can to support them getting the best deal in the back end.
I would say that when they're listing with us, they have urgency. They want to get the deals closed and over the finish line. I think the ones that don't have as much urgency are ones that haven't really decided that they're ready to sell yet. Maybe they're contemplating it or thinking about it, or thinking they might have read an article or heard a friend that sold their business for a certain amount of money. And they think I could get this kind of premium for my business. But I think that once people make that decision to sell, it's really about getting that deal across the finish line as quickly as possible on behalf of the seller, with a good deal for the buyer as well. So I see a lot of urgency with sellers.
Yes.
Potential sellers is a different story, right?
I know. We're all working on that pipeline.
Yeah. And that's I've got a couple in each camp. The sellers that are, they're not in a position where they're feeling forced to sell or motivated to sell, and they're kind of doing that limbo, that dance, versus the sellers that they've made that decision, they're committed, they're invested in doing everything to get the deal across the finish line. It's almost like they want to move faster than our process is, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's great.
There's a reason they want.
So do you find you find the sellers that are not in an urgent situation, if they can get the right price, they will sell, but otherwise they're going to sit on it for a while.
And then after they sit on it for a while and understand the opportunity cost of sitting on it for a while, then all of a sudden they've got this extreme urgency. It's like, can you sell my business in 3 months?
You're like,
Well, we talked like 9 months ago, and we probably would have been sold by now, but
Exactly.
Or you have the person that comes up to you, I want to sell this in 2 weeks. And it's like, oh, that's not going to happen.
Let me introduce you to Auctions Ohio.
and I'll tell you, oftentimes we're approached by people that say, well, I don't know that I want to have a year-long listing agreement. Will you do 6 months? Will you do something less?
Yeah.
And I was just talking with one of my brokers about a client that made that request. And I said, well, how do you feel about working on a transaction for a period of time and knowing that, you only have 6 months to get it done? I said, you would want to make sure that it's priced appropriately.
Yeah.
And by appropriately, it means not an exuberant multiple.
Price to sell.
Price to sell. And if you go into that type of an agreement, and I would authorize the agent to do it with the understanding that you're going to look at price, you're going to look at activity, and expect a conversation with the seller to say, look, here's our activity, here's what we're hearing from clients. It's time to talk about a price reduction.
Yeah.
That's the only way that I would look at going into that short term of a relationship.
Exactly.
So why do you want to cut off time when you're in the middle of a transaction? And we know deals take 7 to 11 months. So
Yeah.
you don't want to put some artificial timeline on something that has a runway ahead of it. I think all LOIs are not created equal, and I've seen some very thin LOIs and some very extensive LOIs. And I think it just speaks to the nature of the counsel that's supporting the buyer, the financing that is part of that. And so when we're working with an LOI, which in many cases we will, sometimes we'll use our standard agreements, but some cases we'll use an LOI. It's just making sure that all parties are in alignment with what needs to be done to get the deal over the finish line, staying close with due diligence, making sure that all of the requests for due diligence are being prepared and submitted in a timely and appropriate fashion. But it's important to set that expectation with the seller and the buyer that, we're going to have to get through several items before we can get to the closing table. A lot of it's going to be dependent upon the counsel that's, involved doing the LOI and the definitive agreement.
Yeah. I wish we had more offer and acceptances versus
too.
LOIs. We've learned the hard way that it's just a struggle.
The thing about our agreements that I like, Jennefer, is they protect the seller.
Yeah.
They protect the buyer. They protect the broker
Yeah.
too, right? Because we're an intermediary. And oftentimes you'll get a lopsided LOI that is favoring one side over the other. And then you put the two people together and it's just kind of not a match. The templated agreements that we use are all, legal reviewed in the states that we do business in. They're tried and true. They've got plenty of protections, plenty of outs if somebody's looking to
Exactly.
get
It's
out.
not tying anyone in. It's just protecting the bubble that they're creating
Right.
to get through due diligence and into funding.
Because most LOIs are non-binding. There's a lot
There's nothing.
that are in there that are non-binding. And then they'll say, except for the certain provisions which all
Yes.
favor the buyer, right?
Yes,
So,
all favor the buyer.
right.
Because they write
so-
the LOIs.
Right.
And they also don't protect the broker in the case of LOIs at all.
Definitely
Right.
not. Definitely not. And it might not be advantageous to the seller. So you've got to really be careful when you've got an LOI that the seller takes it to their counsel and gets a consultation and advice from their counsel, because sometimes these LOIs are a little bit lopsided.
Yeah. It's interesting, to see different brokers all around, and some are like, you absolutely have to use our forms. There's no other way, shape, or form. And then others are so timid, like, I'll take whatever you give.
Well, that is inevitably going to lead to them being in a situation where they put in all that time, they invest their emotions and energy into
Yeah.
helping the seller get the deal across the table,
Right.
and it doesn't
Yeah.
go anywhere.
Nobody wants a deal to fail.
Right.
And-
none,
and
none of
The,
the three
the
parties.
documents help us keep them on track.
I mean, I would expect more larger deals to be done with an LOI.
I would-
They're going to their attorney and having something written up.
Right. I would generally agree with you. However, there are some serial buyers or people that have bought other businesses before that maybe have put in an offer on a lower price business that would be perfectly acceptable to go through our offer agreement and acceptance form. But because of their background and experience in the other transactions that they've done, they default to what they know. So they'll do an LOI for a $300,000 transaction. Like, why would you do that?
Very
there's a
expensive with
lot
the
of
Why
legal
waste the
expense.
money?
Yep.
Know,
Right.
Transworld's been around forever.
Right.
We've built these forms. We know what we're doing.
Right.
I love when a buyer comes in, they've already dealt with Transworld.
Right.
And like, oh yeah, just use your form. Absolutely. Like, why spend the money when we know it's already vetted
Right.
and it gets the job done?
Right.
Because they can literally spend thousands of dollars on an LOI.
Easy.
depending
On a piece of paper that's not as protecting
Right.
as
Especially
the
when you go
forms that we have. I
Ironically,
know, right?
Especially when you go through multiple iterations of
Right.
those
Oh,
LOIs
yeah.
too. It's
Exactly.
I think the thing that I would guess, because I don't know, what I'm seeing as I'm utilizing the forms and agreements that are, that have been vetted, that have been created by Transworld, is that the seller or the buyer can come back and feel like we're forcing them to use this, and it's to protect us first.
Yeah.
And so I'm learning, again, the hard way to like proactively manage the emotional side of
Yep.
that expectation setting conversation around why the form says what it does, why the
Right.
agreement says what it does, where it protects the buyer, where
Right.
it protects the seller, and where it protects us as the broker
So-
up front.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is we need to build trust
Yes.
with
Yes.
our buyers, our sellers, everyone up front. And instead of just emailing every
Pushing it,
buyer
yeah.
and, saying, here's our forms, just do this, actually have a conversation with them.
Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, the clients have the right and the need to know what's in the agreements. And if they're unclear, you've got to explain it to them. Don't just
that
send
time.
somebody a piece of paper and say, sign here. That's not honoring the role of being a broker.
I'd say what I try to do with like our offer and acceptance or a marketing agreement, I send it to a blank copy to them
Yeah.
and say, let's walk through this.
Yep.
Yes.
And then, get yourself comfortable with it. And, they can go get an attorney to review that as well. And it's like,
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good best practice. I do the exact same thing, whether it's a marketing agreement or offer, sale, and acceptance agreement.
Yeah.
You always want to follow that up with. You still take this to your attorney to have them
Yeah.
check it for form and substance. We're helping you by reducing some of that legal costs that you may have
Right.
by having an attorney review this, write up a whole document, but you still want a legal review from their counsel.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys. It's been a very informative day.
Yes.
I'm sure we have a lot more questions that we'll get on other episodes. But thank you, Vince, for driving down.
My pleasure. I'll do this anytime.
Absolutely. We love having you.
Thank you.
And love co-brokering with you.
It's co-brokering with you is one of the joys of my life. It's been a good experience. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Dip, 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 dip.